everyone, and welcome again to the December 2012 edition of VolunteerMatch Solutions Best Practice Network webinar series. I'm Casey Brennan and will be moderating the session today. We're going to be exploring the practice of impact measurement, which helps us not only make the case for why CSR programs are important, but also helps us improve programs to increase impacts on society, employees, and the company's bottom line. We're joined by two experts to show us how impact measurement is done right and what the rewards can be achieved in doing so. First, we have Farron Levy, who is the president and founder of True Impact, a firm that specializes on triple bottom line assessments. Also with us is Lauren Keeler, Director of Community Engagement at Apollo Group. Lauren worked closely with Farron and his team to assess the Apollo Group's volunteer program and is with us to share the insights about the process and the results. We encourage you to submit your questions for both Farron and Lauren throughout the session today. You can do so by typing into the chat box on the right-hand side of your screen. I'm going to save those questions until the end of the presentation, but you're more than welcome to submit them as they come to mind, and we'll get to as many of those as possible at the end of the session. Also, a reminder for everyone on the line, we will be circulating a copy of the slides and a link to the recording. So if you have to jump out early, you can catch the recording. So without further delay, I'm going to pass the controls over to Farron Levy to take it over. Welcome, Farron.
Great, thank you, Casey. Let me grab the controls. Here we go. Okay, can you see that okay?
Yes, now we can.
Here we go. Okay. Okay. Well, thanks everyone for coming. We've been looking forward to this. We're very excited about it. My name is Farron Levy from True Impact. We specialize in measurement, particularly in this CSR space. We have a number of web-based tools and support services really focused on capturing the social and business impacts of volunteerism and grant making and sustainability, kind of broadly speaking, corporate social responsibility. And we've been working on an initiative for the past couple of years that we're going to be focusing on around volunteerism and capturing social and business value. It's been a partnership with the Points of Light Institute, and VolunteerMatch has been a great partner with that. And we're excited about going through the whole measurement framework that we use as part of this ROI Tracker Initiative, both to give you a sense of the context that we're operating in and the results that we're finding, but also importantly to give you a sense of how you can measure some of this stuff on your own. So I want to just be clear about that, and hopefully we'll have plenty of back and forth as we go through this to make sure that we can answer your questions and make this as practically useful as possible. Let me we're going to be tag teaming this, so I am going to be running through a lot of the initial slides, kind of introducing the frameworks and some of the numbers, and then we'll focus on, from Lauren's perspective, practical applications and how they've used it within Apollo Group. Lauren, do you want to jump in for a second? Say hello to everyone.
Sure. Hi, everybody. As Farron mentioned, I'm Lauren Keeler. I'm the Director of Community Engagement for Apollo Group. We're an education services company with a number of organizations underneath us. Most well-known, probably University of Phoenix. And my role in the organization is supporting our nonprofit partners through engaging our staff, students, faculty, and alumni in high-impact opportunities to give back. I work with internal stakeholders in CSR to engage them in CSR conversations and to promote community engagement and volunteerism as an essential part of the workplace, which we know can be hard to do sometimes without the right data. So when Farron and, a couple years ago, I think, was when we started this, when I heard about the opportunity to jump on board and try out this tool and to get some very valuable data around not just the numbers and the hours and the organizations impacted, but also the return on investment and the impact we're having in the community and the impact that volunteering is having on our internal community, I jumped at the chance. So I'm excited to talk to everybody today with Farron about our experience and how we made it work for us. And yeah, happy to be here.
Perfect, thanks. So we have broken this down into 3 sections. The first one starts with a little background on measurement to just kind of level set a bit, and then we'll jump into actual results from Apollo Group as part of this initiative and what they found for measuring social and business value, and we'll take that opportunity to kind of look at how we did it and how we're framing it, again, hopefully to give you some ideas on your own. And then the last section will be more of the kind of, here's some best practices, here's some additional ideas from implementation perspective, but then importantly, kind of opening up the floor to questions and talking through the practical nature of this, because this is, we're emphatic about this. This is not an academic exercise. It's all designed to help you manage your programs better, and it should be practically useful to you. So that's pretty important to us. Before we start, just to give everyone a sense of kind of where everyone else is, we thought we'd have a quick poll about how people are currently measuring their employee volunteer programs. So please, on your screen, you should see opportunity to check out some of the items here. You're measuring hours, monetary value, percent of employees volunteering, satisfaction, or some other impacts, maybe skills, sales, recruitment, and so on.
And for everyone on the line, this is a multi-select question, so please select as many as are applicable to your organization. I'm going to give everyone about 10 more seconds to submit their answers, and then we'll show everyone the results so we can learn a little bit about each other. So 5 more seconds here, and then I'm going to close and show it to everyone. All right, here we go. And Farron, I don't think you can see these results, so I'm going to read them off to you. So it looks like for the people on the line, 89% of them are measuring the hours volunteered or number of sponsored events. 44% are measuring the monetary value of volunteerism. 48% are measuring the percentage of employees volunteering. 35% satisfaction surveys of volunteers. And finally, 10% are measuring the effects on sales, skill development, and recruitment. So that looks like probably an area that all of us would like to know a little bit more about.
Great. That maps to our experience pretty well. So that's hopefully this will all be useful. So let's jump into this. So hopefully,
sorry.
That knocked me out. Can you see the CSR can offer?
You're all set.
Okay, great. So as I mentioned, just starting off with the landscape and measurement and why it's important. So from our view and our experience in this realm of corporations, particularly large corporations and corporate social responsibility, we see really tons of companies investing huge amounts of resources in the environment, the community, their own employees. They have pretty broad, involved, and generous CSR activities. They care about having an impact. They have plenty of anecdotes that they are having an impact. And at the same time, these kinds of activities also, in addition to the social value, are showing here and there opportunities to generate real business value too. So whether it's sales, recruiting, skill development, stakeholder engagement, any number of things, CSR can be really a very rich opportunity to drive both social and core business goals. But the challenge that we see over and over again is even among the most progressive companies, the ones that are held up as the leading corporate citizens and maybe the most strategic thinkers in this realm in realizing those kind of win-win social and business benefits, even those leaders are often finding measurement difficult. And you'll find a lot of the conventional tracking relates to inputs and outputs. That is, how many hours are the companies investing, or how much money are they investing, the value of that. On the social side, how many people are they serving? Or on the business side, say from a brand perspective, the number of impressions that they're realizing, or from satisfaction surveys, that kind of thing. This tends to be as far as it goes from a systematic measurement perspective. And that's useful, but obviously it's not the same from the chart. It's not the same as the outcomes, and that's really what we're focusing on with our work with this volunteerism initiative. And that's to bring it all down to on the left here, the social value. How much is the social cause that you care about, that you've invested all these resources towards? How much are they improving those issues that your company has rallied around? And that's measuring kind of the change in social condition. So typically how many people have achieved that level of success, whether it's achieving certain reading levels, or how many formerly homeless families are now sustainably housed, or how many acres of wetlands have been improved to a certain acceptable grade level. So these are the social outcomes that companies really care about in defining success, and there really are opportunities, as we'll see, to measure that. There are also, I put in here, ways to monetize that, and those are typically what are the economic ripple effects of achieving those positive social outcomes. And so that can be value to society in terms of reduction on things like social service or welfare payments, or if you're doing economic development, opportunities to for economic growth to actually pay into society's coffers, or economic value to nonprofits. So you see that a fair amount too. How much money are we saving nonprofits as a result of what we're doing? And we'll touch on all of those things. And then over on the right, in blue, is the business value. And no matter what industry you're in, and no matter what sector you're in, whether private, nonprofit, or government, this is always the same. These categories are always the same. You either are increasing revenues or reducing costs. That's what generates business value. And there are subcategories here, of course. Increasing revenues, attract or retain customers, get them to buy more, pay more for your products. Or on the cost saving side, that's where things like skill development and productivity and risk and recruiting and turnover, that's where those fall. So what's nice about this categorization, these three components, promoting the social mission, increasing revenues, and reducing costs, those are just three simple categories that can help you focus on what's important when you're trying to think about how do you capture social and business ROI. So that's what we focus on this initiative. That's what we're going to be talking about. But first, why is this important? And as I mentioned earlier, this shouldn't be an academic exercise. Sometimes we get so used to saying, oh, measurement's important. It's something that's just expected, and it's almost a checkbox. Is it something that we do to show that we're paying attention and being accountable? But we really want to focus on how specifically is it useful to you as a manager of your programs. And the two categories that we see across companies are, number one, the most important, proving value, and that is justifying to the company, the leadership, the people who have gotten behind investing such significant resources in these different initiatives, that you are actually moving people in terms of generating social value and business value. And this is also particularly important when you're lucky if you've got leadership entirely behind you and the company's fully committed, but more often there are folks scattered about who view volunteerism and CSR more broadly with some skepticism, and some people are even kind of hostile to it. And that's where these more objective, concrete measures are so important, because we're putting it in terms that they can understand and they can relate to, because it's the terms that they work with day in and day out with their other business functions. The other category is improving value, and that's another key component in recognizing that as with any other functional area within your companies, that's what people are using measures for. Are we from the proving value, are we achieving success, but then also what are our opportunities to continuously improve what we're doing? And when whether you're a small or large company, you're often doing things over and over again, maybe in different geographies or different programs or volunteer activities, month after month or quarter after quarter. And invariably, some of those activities will perform really well, and some of them will fall short. And to have a measurement regime, a way to systematically track performance, is key to figure out what's working so you can do more of it, and what is weak so you can intervene and improve it, or over time say, you know what, this just isn't working for us, let's cut our losses here and reallocate our resources to things that really are more successful. And that overall is how you help increase the social and business ROI of your programs. So, you know, why isn't everyone doing this? I think the main obstacles here are, number one, there's a general appreciation for this and the value of measurement, but where do you start? And I think that's there are no real standardized frameworks that people can easily point to, and in addition to that, a general sense that measurement is necessarily very expensive or demanding of expertise that you don't have in-house, and maybe doesn't even result in data that's practically useful for you. So at the end of the day, we don't know where to start, and even if we did, it probably wouldn't be practical. And I think that is unfortunately a general perception of measurement. And what we want to jump into now as we go into the second section here are frameworks that are practical and that are none of these things, that are simple to implement and useful and so on. And this is a little background on how we generated this ROI Tracker Initiative. This was a partnership that we developed with the Points of Light Institute and Hands-On Network and their Corporate Service Council. So they have a number of mostly large corporations, Fortune 500 companies, and their volunteer managers and CSR managers as part of a ROI council. And these are folks who have, for years, have been measuring the number of hours that they invest, number of nonprofits they serve. They occasionally field a satisfaction survey or two. And we really wanted to bring it to the next level and be able to, in a more compelling way, prove value and run their departments like a business and improve the value of what they're doing. So we kind of wrestled with this and workshopped with the main issues, and ultimately came up with what were the guidelines, and kind of consistent with what I had just outlined. Number one, it had to be practically useful. There's a lot of stuff that people are already reporting on with corporate giving standard or other initiatives. They don't want it to be duplicative. It has to be something additive and really kind of plug into something that's that will be embraced by the rest of the company. It has to be everyone's on different systems, or using the same system in a different way, or they have different IT department issues they have to contend with. So it has to be very simple from that perspective too, and compatible. Turnkey. Look, everyone is way too busy to do something new. Nothing can take a lot of time because people are overwhelmed as it is, and their time and their budgets are all stretched. So this had to be simple and useful at the end of the day. And what we ultimately came up with was this ROI Tracker Initiative, and what it is, it's a survey-based system. It's you can see here, outcome-focused, activity-specific, and standardized. And what that means is we developed these surveys that are sent directly to volunteers after their volunteer activity, after their specific activity, and asking them about observed impact in the different social and business categories. So this is not a general satisfaction survey about volunteerism, or do they think that CSR is useful to the company. It's more specifically asking them, okay, after your particular volunteer experience, did you develop any specific skills, or did you generate any new sales leads, or was there any observable social impact? So it's less of a perception survey and more of a reporting tool in finding out what specifically has occurred. Then there's also the component, very important, that it is related to specific activities, so you can see what's working and what's not. And then finally, standardize. So you can, when you're doing the same thing over and over again, you can compare your current performance against your past performance and see if you're improving. And then importantly, if you can get a whole bunch of different companies doing the same thing and capturing the same kind of value, the same types of data, then it gives you the opportunity to do benchmarking and see context. Gee, how well are we doing? Gee, that number, we did achieve this kind of aspirational goal 35% of the time. Is that good or not? I don't know. Or the value was X dollars. Is it good or not? I don't know. That's where the context and benchmarking can really be helpful. So that, at the end of the day, is what we're doing, and that's something that you can do as well. Again, we'd love to have tons of companies participating because it just increases the value of the overall benchmarking network, but this is absolutely something that you can implement by yourselves. So let me run into or present here the move over. Okay, so let's jump now into the Apollo Group case study itself. So here you can see a quick snapshot of the company. It's about $900 million revenues, about 20,000 employees, and reported 72,000 hours last year on the VolunteerMatch platform, and with focus areas school and workforce readiness and sustainability, but also kind of broadly speaking just a ton of different employee-directed activities. So they're all kind of capture a broad range of different things and engaging with the community. Now this over here may seem a little overwhelming. I'm just going to run quickly through these different categories to give you, again, a sense of how we measure those things. And, you know, sit back, absorb it. Please don't be overwhelmed by it. You don't have to, if you're going to do this on your own, you don't have to do all these things at all. Maybe focus on the 2 or 3 things that you're most interested in and see how easy it can be and implement it. And if you want to expand over time, once you find out that it is pretty easy, then please do that. I also put down here the nature of the data sets that we used. So you could see in 2010 we had 867 respondents. 2011 we had 418. This highlights the fact that sample sizes, survey samples are a really powerful tool. You know, you don't have to be collecting perfect information or collecting data from everyone after every single activity. You can take, if you take a representative sample, all you need is a relatively small sample size in order to have credible data. In fact, if you have about 20,000 employees, all you need is somewhere around 380 responses to get into 95% confidence interval. So that sample size can be surprisingly low. And I do also put the response rate here so you can get a sense of that. We have enjoyed really high response rates, typically between high 20s to maybe mid 50s. So we're proud of this, and but I put it here to kind of underscore the importance of making surveys user-friendly and simple. So we aim for a survey that can be completed between 2 and 4 minutes, and the more obviously valuable you can make it, the more likely people are going to receive it and complete it.
Well, and Farron, if you don't mind that I jump in for a second, regarding the survey, I think one of the real benefits was that it fit in with what we were already doing. It looked like it came from us. It didn't look like it came from an outside source. You know, it had our logo and our branding. I believe it had my name and phone number on it. If anybody had questions, so we got the questions. It really made it feel like it was not an add-on, that it was part of the program. And I took the survey. It was simple, easy questions that just tied to a particular event that you participated in, and it was really easy to fill out. I think, like I said, the customizability and the way that it really fit in really made a difference in the response rate, because our employees, and I'm sure many employees at other organizations, have all kinds of things that they get asked to fill out. And so the more that it can look like part of what you're already doing and make sense, because they know what the volunteer program looks like and what the branding looks like and what my name is, and so they were familiar and comfortable with it. And I think that the sample sizes, the difference was, I think the one in 2010 was twice as long of a period of data collection. I think we did a shorter collection in 2011, and both provided us all kinds of really great, valuable info. So I think that it works for you regardless of your time constraints and all of that. So let me jump in.
Great, perfect, thank you. All right, so let's jump into some of these categories. So number one, social impact. We capture social value in two ways. One, money saved of the nonprofit, and the other is the impact on the nonprofits themselves. So here on the left, we take an approach where we're looking at the specific activity performed. So a lot of you, I'm sure, are familiar with the independent sector's kind of average value per hour for volunteerism. What that is generated from is the Bureau of Labor Statistics mean wage data, and they just take an average of all the different activities performed in the United States, or all the different jobs performed in the United States, and take an average of that and just apply that to a volunteer activity. We actually use the same data set because it's a longer conversation about kind of competing approaches here, but we do use this data set because it is by far the most comprehensive data set on valuing activities. But one difference is we break down the individual activities and assign and use the individual rates of those activities. And that's important in our view because it breaks out, it really highlights the relative values of different services being provided. So quickly, take for example software systems development at about $54 an hour versus food preparation and sorting, $11 an hour. So what's important here is, I think generally speaking, highlighting the fact that some of the higher skilled activities can be 4, 5, 6 times as valuable as some of the traditional activities. And that's a great thing to be paying attention to if you want to figure out, given the limited hours that your employees have, what are the opportunities for them to generate the most value for the nonprofit. So that's money saved. We just looked what are the number of hours performed for each kind of activity, the rate. It automatically calculates the total value and generates the overall composite value, and then divides through and gives you an average rate, in this case $22.79. Now the other perspective is capacity gain. So we're asking the volunteers to report on any observable impacts on the nonprofit as a result of their volunteer activity. So we break it down into two categories. One is either helping them increase the efficiency or effectiveness of their operations. So you can see here, that's just can they do the same or more with less, with fewer resources, or achieve success more frequently. So that's kind of addressing their value chain, if you will. And the other is increasing reach. Can you just help them, whatever they're doing, help them reach more beneficiaries and serve more people in whatever social service that they're providing. So with that, we collect data from via the surveys, and the results will look like this. So you can see here in 2011, Apollo Group had $22.78 average value across their portfolio of volunteer activities. And if you were going to monetize the overall value of all your volunteerism, you would take that average value, multiply it by the total number of hours, and for them, so that was 72,000 hours, result in $1.6 million worth of volunteer time. So that idea conceptually is that's how much you're saving nonprofits as a result of them not having to hire someone to perform those volunteer tasks. So this is from a proving value perspective, and the fact that you're using standardized measures, and if you're using the same measures as other companies, as we do in the ROI tracker, then you can see, okay, this 2279, this puts you in the kind of in the middle of the pack with all the other companies. So 13 out of 28 was the ranking. You can see the distribution of different companies here. And so this is context. It can be very helpful to figure out, gee, is 2279, are we at the high end? Are we at the low end? Is there opportunity to improve? Where is it? That's when I'd mentioned context, that's how that can be valuable. But then standardizing against your own past performance is also really key in tracking continuous improvement. So in this case, 2278 versus 1877, that's a 21% gain from 2010, which is a pretty huge deal. So you can do the same in tracking your numbers from nonprofit capacity. We only had this configuration. We had a different configuration in 2010, but this broke out in 2011. You could see roughly close to a third of nonprofits that were served had some material impacts on capacity. And that's something that you could report on or track and compare. And then also, still in this proving value realm, don't just be a slave to numbers. The qualitative responses can be valuable too in terms of kind of putting them together and adding a little color commentary, as they say, a little more humanity to the numbers to give people a sense of what you're really talking about when you're presenting different percentages or numbers, those kinds of things. So you can see here, what's the nature of the social impact? How did you improve capacity by improved systems or streamlining here or whole new techniques that help certain results in generating value for the nonprofit? All are key and in helping you to communicate, again, to your leadership or your own employees, employee base, or promoting continuous improvement. So that's proving value, this other category of improving value. If you are tracking your results from your volunteers by activity, so you're asking them to report on what they did and for whom, and then they report on different social and business impacts, then you can track which ones are really successful and which ones are not quite as successful. So in this view, this is a graphic that we use throughout the process, but it's you can see here, this is the average, 2279. This is from the monetary value perspective. If this was something you cared about improving, so you said 2279, that's not bad, but it's something I'd like to improve, then here it lists all the activities that your employees engaged in that had an average value per hour above 2279 in green in the percentage. And then those in red are those are below that average number. So the simple lever, if you will, is if you want to improve your overall average, see if you can steer people from the activities in red to more of the activities in green, and that will increase your overall average. That's social value. Now we'll move on to satisfaction, and this is, I'll go a little more quickly here because we're using the same approach with all of these from both the prove and improve value perspective. So we're asking for satisfaction from the volunteer after their specific experience. We'll ask how satisfying was that particular event, which is a pretty common kind of activity for volunteer programs. But then we also ask how important is it to their overall job satisfaction. So we're connecting it more closely to business value and what HR departments tend to most care about, that concept of engagement. So this high level of satisfaction, I have a little key here, people extremely are very satisfied, or is it a positive core component of their overall job satisfaction? This is the kind of data that we're collecting. So for Apollo Group, they did really well. And we're consistently doing very well from the event satisfaction perspective, 88%. That's fairly, this is a highly clustered kind of response on companies. People tend to enjoy their volunteerism. When you get to job satisfaction, I don't have the graphic here, but it's far more variable. But you can see here, Apollo did about 4% better from last year. Overall job satisfaction, they were in the top quartile and 11% gain from last year. And these can be really compelling data, again, to HR departments. When you're doing this, yeah, give close-ended questions for them to kind of click in and hierarchy or categories of satisfaction, but then also include opportunities to for people to expand on that and give a little more qualitative responses, again, for context and color. Satisfaction for improving value, we do the same approach here where we're tracking individual activities and what services are people performing and how well, how satisfying were they. So you can see, so the average value here is 88%. All those activities in green are performing higher than that in terms of satisfaction, and those in red are performing lower than that. So again, if you feel like this is something you'd want to improve on, either see if you can steer people from the red activities to the green activities, or look at those activities at the top of the list and how they're designed, and see if you can incorporate some of those design elements into the lower performing activities that you may still be committed to, but you just want to improve. Over here on the right, we also, and this is something you can do as well, we also ask people to identify what were the most satisfying components of their volunteerism. So we get some insight into what are those drivers of satisfaction. So things like camaraderie, networking, socializing, the activity itself, the convenience, then kind of how well it was managed, all these things, and tracking which are the top kind of performing activities in each of those really are powerful insights from a continuous improvement perspective. Skill development, we capture a number of different things here, but the most important that we encourage you to think about is job-related skills, and that's a pretty important nuance, the job-related part. So we're asking people, what activities or what skills did you gain that are directly relevant to your job? And that's distinct from exercising existing skills. So if you write PR, press releases for your company, and you do this day after day and you're really good at it, and you do that for a nonprofit, that's great. That's wonderful leverage of your time, and it generates a great deal of social value, but we've already captured that in the social section. But if it's something that you're doing over and over again and you're not stretching, it's not generating any value for you from a skill perspective. So that's where we're focused on new job-relevant skills, whether it's management opportunity, increased stakeholder engagement, or new specific skills. Those are the things that HR departments, again, really value and in the business realm can be appreciated. So here are numbers that support that, and you can incorporate aspects related to team development and internal networking as well. Just a simple question or two in each of these categories and being outcome focused. A little more detail here, some examples of what kinds of skills or the nature of teaming, and gee, if you're doing a lot of telecommuting, do you get an opportunity to interact with people personally that you wouldn't have otherwise, and so on. And the last category I wanted to touch on is these other business effects that don't frankly happen with great frequency with traditional volunteerism, but they do happen periodically, and sometimes when they happen they can be really significant, and that's in the realm of sales or recruiting or stakeholder relationships. So we include that in the survey as well. If it hasn't occurred, we just guide people to leave it blank. But if it has occurred, they click into it, and it turns out when there's a meaningful impact in this or any area, people like to talk about it as long as you make it easy for them. So how we approach this is mostly from the perspective of generating new relationships. So we're asking them whether in the course of their volunteer experience did they meet any new sales leads or recruiting leads or new kind of other stakeholders, or materially strengthen existing relationships. And they can click into those and grade how significant they are or the value of those, and again give a little text to go along with that. And that's something you can track compared to other companies. You can see even having a 7% sales lead number puts you third out of 28 in this benchmarking group. So it's easy to be a real leader in these areas. And importantly, to identify, even if it happens relatively infrequently, what was the nature of that? What was the type of volunteerism that led to that? So if you can encourage more of that, that's the opportunity to generate more gains in these particular categories. And then here's the qualitative aspect. Kind of more context, but then you can also, as we do, but didn't share it in this case, you can gather specific data of what, maybe from a sales perspective, who was the person, from what company, what was the value or likely value of that lead or potential value, and so on. And then, again, the improving value, what kinds of activities lead to these particular impacts, or what's the nature of that, what are the real drivers of those different leads. So that covers it. That's the different categories from social, satisfaction, skill development, sales, recruiting, retention. We also had, we did have a, I neglected to mention, but a brand aspect in there too. But you can capture that also in people reporting on any PR that's being generated. But it really comes down to just thinking about the things that you care about, the things that are important to your company from both a social and business impact perspective, and thinking about what the outcome of that is, and asking people about it. And again, not their perceptions, but reporting concretely on what they experienced in any of these. And the more you can do this in a consistent way, the more you can present compelling numbers and really, in a powerful way, improve what you're doing just by tweaking here and there and nudging your program to be the best that it can be. So I've talked a lot. So let me, this is kind of where we wanted to ultimately end up, and maybe talk a bit more, a bit about practical aspects of this, and maybe talking about how Apollo has used it internally, or kind of navigated all this kind of theory into practice. So please, if you have any questions, please don't be shy.
Farron, this is Casey again. I just wanted to actually pose one question to Lauren, just to hear a little bit from her. You know, there's a lot of aspects here, and there's a lot of deep and rich kind of depth that you can go into with this system and this tracker. So I guess it's kind of a question for both of you. Are there ways to decide which of these impact types you want to be tracking? And, you know, just a question for Lauren, were there particular areas that you were specifically focused on as it relates to impacts for your organization?
Sure. Farron, I can start if you want. So, you know, obviously all of the data here was great, and like Casey said, there's a lot to it. You get this report that is so full of wonderful information, but it's kind of scary, and you don't know what to do with it. And so we did have key pieces. I think the most useful sections of the reports that we got back were around business value and job satisfaction. You know, it's great to know how many of them enjoyed our volunteer projects. We've done that on our own through surveys after, you know, a volunteer event, but the job satisfaction piece was huge for us. You know, as organizations are cutting budgets or looking at, you know, ways to kind of streamline, I think that volunteerism, and I think Farron touched on this a little bit, and CSR is kind of the really nice to do, and we'd love to be able to do that if we had all the time and all the money in the world, but it kind of gets forgotten about when, you know, it comes time to streamline. And so I think being able to prove the business value, that I think our number was 88% of our employees said that volunteerism and having programs like this and participating with us was one of, or if not the highest component of their job satisfaction and why they stayed here. That's huge. And being able to share that with the right people in HR, through sharing that information, we got buy-in from our Chief Human Resource Officer, who's now a champion for volunteerism, and we meet with him regularly. And you know, that started a relationship with us that we didn't have before, and HR was kind of a labyrinth before that. And so being able to show them, not the whole report, but pulling out pieces that were key to them and that spoke to them. I think Farron also mentioned that you have to speak their language, and so which data points are going to speak to which leaders. That really helped us. Also, the skill development was huge as well, being able to show that having programs like this and getting our employees out in the community builds their skills and makes them better employees, makes them engaged employees, retains great employees. I think all of that was really great information. So those are probably the two categories that were the most useful to us. Farron, I don't know from your perspective in the measurement, the other side of Casey's question about selecting which pieces are important to you. I don't know if you want to talk about that, but those are the two that were really important to us.
Yeah, that's a very good question. It really differs from company to company, and this is something that we have we had to learn a little bit when we launched this. Yeah, we're a measurement company, so all we do is focus on measuring things, and when we find ways to do it that are pretty simple and compelling, we get very excited, and the more we can generate, the more excited we get. But then we found that in doing this, it would sometimes be overwhelming to people. It's kind of, we're collecting a lot of data. You might as well, why not collect it with all the different aspects that we're including in the survey, and we just noted to people, just pick out what you want. But still, people would get a lot of this data and be like, oh, wow, this is great, but I don't even know where to start. So we have incorporated into this whole process just a few minutes to be kind of thinking through for an individual company what's important to you, and going through to the categories and saying, all right, who are your internal stakeholders, who do you need to report to, what do you want to focus on, and then just have that identified from the beginning if it's sales or skill development or engagement, and then that can reduce the stress a little bit when you get a lot of data and you feel like you want to use all of it. So no, just go back and say, all right, focus on these 2 things or these 3 things, and then report on them, include them in your internal newsletters or external CSR reports, and then you can evolve over time. That's actually one of the things I think VolunteerMatch does really well, and kind of the regular check-ins that we've learned from, and we now do regular check-ins with the companies just to touch base and say, let's look over your data together and let's talk about how to absorb it and how you can use it in the most practical way. It's a 10-minute conversation, but it really, thinking that way can help. It's the last kind of key part to making data useful to you. And again, you could do that on your own with your own goals.
That's a great point, Farron. It's really about taking the data, having somebody like TrueImpact to help walk you through it and pull out the things that they know are important, but also possibly pointing out other points of opportunity where you performed really well, or maybe you're underperforming that you want to think about as you continue to iterate. That's great advice. One of the more abstract things that you're measuring is social value. And I wanted to just ask, because we've had a few questions, and Farron, if you could just speak to how exactly are you calculating social value when you use it in this tool?
So the social value pieces, the 2 approaches that we used are the money saved and the impact on the nonprofits. Hopefully, and you guys will get the deck, so you can look a little more closely at the calculations related to the Bureau of Labor Statistics and that monetary value piece. The piece that often sparks more of the questions are related to the impacts on the nonprofits. And so for traditional volunteerism, we're not going beyond identifying or just tracking observed impacts on efficiency or effectiveness or reach by the volunteer. And that, admittedly, that's not the ideal. The ideal would be to have the nonprofit themselves report on those, and you can actually quantify those too. Kind of, if you feel like you've improved efficiency or effectiveness, by how much? Are you 10% more effective, 25% more effective? If you previously, your social service achieved success 75% of the time, and then someone came in and helped you bump it up to 84% of the time, and that's a 10% increase. You know, that you can quantify that and say a 10% increase, or translate that in how many more people achieve success. So that's the ideal, and we actually do that in the realm of pro bono, just because they're more involved, and we have a version of this that's launching around around pro bono. But the reason we do it in that case is those activities tend to be longer, like they're greater investments of time, and there's more opportunity for and more reason for a nonprofit and a volunteer to kind of sit down for an extra minute or two and think about that, versus traditional volunteerism has a lot of done in a day or a few hour kind of commitments, and it's so theoretically you could do what I just outlined for traditional volunteerism, but practically it doesn't make a lot of sense. So that's what we do here is we push people in the right direction to think about outcomes, but we don't we acknowledge that it's not a perfect kind of measure, but it's better than what's typically being captured.
And to that point, Farron, are you currently, I know you mentioned that there's going to be a pro bono focused version of this kind of tool, but do you currently weight the different types of capacity measurement based on a one-time volunteer engagement versus somebody who might go on a reoccurring basis once a week to that organization, or is it currently just all the same?
That would be inherently captured in the mix, in the sample mix. If you have a good representative sample and you have people who, you get better the more you do. You could either do a snapshot, kind of one. We do this version where a company can capture, send out the survey to everyone who's volunteered over the previous 3 months, and they just report on their most recent volunteer activity. You can get a better, more typically better representative sample if you do that maybe every quarter. And the idea is, if you have a good representative sample, you're going to be capturing people who are doing more consistent volunteerism with different kind of nonprofits. So I guess that's the best way I can answer it. Yeah. Okay,
great. I'm actually interested in hearing a little bit more from Lauren. I think you started to talk about, the way in which you use this based on those important data points that you were able to pull out. I'm curious how these results were received and what kind of changes you saw, or maybe additional buy-in or excitement. Can you talk a little bit about those results internally once you were able to share this information?
Absolutely. So I can't tell you how many times, I talked about the two areas that we really focused on, but I'm always going back to this report, whether it's pulling out some new data for our CSR report that we do annually, or it's talking to an executive, or it's trying to make the case for, a more time-intensive, skills-based type of volunteer activity, or if it's pulling out one of the anecdotes from the qualitative responses. We use it all the time. So as I kind of mentioned, one of the biggest things we got out of it was a stronger relationship with human resources. I know some volunteer and CSR departments fall underneath HR. We don't. And they've kind of been this mystery department for us for quite a while. And so having this data and having information that talks to them in a way that they understand, skill development, business value, job satisfaction, we're using words that get their attention and that they care about. And so that kind of information really took us light years beyond where we were in a relationship with them. We have developed a CSR council that we're working on based on, getting buy-in, the more buy-in from the leaders within HR and those other key departments through sharing this kind of information. We have an executive champion with our chief human resource officer, like I mentioned, that we may not have had if we didn't have this kind of information to share. The information on hours and those kinds of things is important, but I think this, telling them something that takes it back to why this is important for the business, really made such an impact. And we share this in lots of ways. Like I said, we have a CSR council that we put together, and our first meeting is this Wednesday, and we have a PowerPoint that talks about our overall giving and our community engagement activities, and 2 or 3 slides is dedicated to data that I'm pulling from the reports that we've gotten from this. So showing why it's important for people to care about, why when you have less dollars to work with, why volunteerism is important, that it's beneficial not just to the community but to our employees. It makes better employees, it makes people like their job a lot more, and I could say that, but being able to show that through data that we got from the True Impact Report really made the difference.
That's awesome. It's really good news to hear that this continues to be a really powerful tool for you to use even beyond it. So kind of showcasing how all of us can be using data to really get that buy-in that we often need for these programs. We just have a couple minutes left, so unfortunately I'm going to hold the rest of the questions, and what I'm going to do is pass those along as appropriate to Farron and Lauren so that we can follow up individually, because we are out of time today. I wanted to just give everyone a couple of reminders about upcoming sessions and how you can make sure that you know when they're happening. We do post on our blog, volunteeringiscsr.org, upcoming events, and we also announce them over Twitter using VM_solutions. So I encourage everyone to follow those 2 sources. You can also subscribe to our monthly newsletter where we also include these announcements, and you can do that on the sidebar of the blog that's mentioned above. Please save the date for our next session. It's going to be on January 22nd, and we're going to be looking at trends in corporate giving and volunteering. We'll be welcoming Margaret Cody of CECP to share some of the findings of the 2012 Giving in Numbers report that the organization launches. And we're also going to be sharing some of soon-to-be-released data from VolunteerMatch, actually, which we conducted this fall, really about highly effective volunteering programs. So again, more insights and data for you. The registration details will be coming soon, but please mark the date for now, and we'll keep you up to date on what's happening. So thank you so much, Farron and Lauren, for coming and sharing all of your perspective and insights today. This has been really fantastic. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for sharing, and thank you for answering all of our questions. And thanks to everyone for joining us today and listening in. We'll look forward to seeing you all next time. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.